What's up, guys? I've been promising this video, so I figured I'd go ahead and knock it out when I was about to install these. So let's talk about trailing arms. Trailing arms, what they are, what they're used for, what is their purpose, and why you need them on your setup. So first and foremost, let's talk about the stock trailing arms. Okay, so obviously you got your stock trailing arms. Now, what I'm talking about in this particular video is mostly about G-bodies, Cadillacs, things like that. When it comes to Impalas are a little bit different only because they have the trailing arms with the ball joint, or excuse me, the power balls on the actual lower trailing arms and on the lower side, and then you've got your wishbone or your Y-bar on the top side, which I would never use a Y-bar, but that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, jumping back. So as you can see from the stock ones, these are the stock ones. Stock ones are pretty much just what they are. You can use them, yes, but here's where it becomes a problem. One, these don't adjust at all. The thing is when they're going up and down, you see that there's no rotation from left to right. These are not meant to go like this, okay? They're meant to stay straight. That's all they're meant to do. Well, the beauty part about things like these is that they are meant to have some rotate to them. So when you go to three-wheel, one, it'll rotate easier and it will three-wheel easier. Okay, so that's the first thing. The next thing is you've got a certain point you're going to need to adjust your pinion angle so that it doesn't vibrate when your rear end is pointing down or pointing up too far. So the point of these is to correct that issue and either pull your rear end back or pull it forward, whatever the case may be. So not to get too complicated, but I'll go into everything in detail here in just a minute. So you've got two different styles, okay? These are the style that most shops sell. And what it basically is and I'm sure you're familiar with probably tie rods in the front to adjust your steering, whether the wheels go this way, or if they're like this or whatever. Anyway, the point is there's one screw on the inside that basically when you twist it, it either opens it or it closes it. So for example, like if you can see these, when you twist it like this, if I can keep it still. All right, let's try that. When you keep it still and you twist this one bolt, see how it's separating it? So this is one style. So that makes these very easy to adjust. The downside is, and from my experience anyway, is that these things do come out of adjustment. So even though there's these locking nuts that are supposed to be able to lock, the one side or the other side or both sides, they do, when you three-wheel and you twist the thing, here's what happens. So immediately this is going to come undone. And I don't care what anybody says, it doesn't matter how tight that you get these things. You are using the entire force of the car. Can you imagine how many foot-pounds of torque that is? So you're using the whole force of the car to turn them. So, and plus the truth is you want these to kind of be free a little bit, to twist a little bit, so that when you three-wheel it's, much easier. Anyway, long story short, they've got another kind. The other kind is my personal preference, but it's only because they don't come out of adjustment. And what it is, it's basically just one side of this moves. So if you can imagine, and I don't have a set here that I can show you, but so basically it's on one side it's locked and the other side is the only side that moves. Now the good thing about that is they don't come out of adjustment. The downside is that in order to make an adjustment, you literally have to disconnect the bolt, pull the bolt out, drop it down, open it up, then put it back in and put the bolt back in. Then you have to test it and see if your pinion angle is correct, and if it's not, you got to pull it back out. So there's short-term gain, long-term loss, type of situation. But there's nothing wrong with either one of them. Just know that if you get this style, you're going to have to keep an eye on it and make sure that they do stay where they're supposed to be. What I normally do is once I figure out where they are and exactly where I want them on a car, especially like on my own personal, maybe not on customers' cars because they need to figure that out. But anyway, what I'll do is I will measure hole to hole, and that is exactly where it needs to be. Okay, so then I will make sure that when I put them in, and I'll write it down, I'll stick it in my glove box, but that distance is exactly where it needs to be, so that when in a few months, when it decides that it's going to make an adjustment and move on me, then I can be like, okay, well, I know where it was at when it was perfect, so I'll just adjust it to where that is. Now, when you're measuring the center to center of the bolt once it's in the car. So here's another thing I would suggest doing while you've got your trailing arms out. These bolts that come with everything stock, normally they're trashed and wrong size, and anyway, long story short, you got these, you can see how much play is in them. Well, when you order these, or order them from wherever, it doesn't really matter, you'll notice that there's a ton of play a lot of times. Now is a good opportunity for you to switch to grade 8 bolts and change the bolt size. And here's what I've got. You can see that once you put this sucker in there, there's almost no play. With that said, when you go to put these in, the holes that are on the car are not going to be this size. All you're going to do is take, see, obviously this doesn't fit. All you're going to do is take a step down drill bit and literally just open it up one little bit more on the actual car. The thing is, you don't want any play. You want as little play as possible, okay? I mean, literally no play as possible. So let me just grab that other bolt. You can see right here, there's literally almost no play in this, right? But look how much the stock one has. I mean, obviously you don't want that. So it's a good opportunity to go ahead and swap those out. Now, like on this caddy, the bushings that are on the rear end, and this is the side that goes on the rear end, or on the top side of the rear end. These are upper. The holes that are in the upper ones, though, on the Cadillac, is you can't just open it up. So here's where it gets a little interesting. Even though these bolts are one step down as far as size, these will easily fit the bushings that are on there right now, the stock bushings. Okay, but as you can see, there's a ever so slightly bit of play. But here's the thing, there's not a whole lot you can do about it at this point, because the bushings themselves, the sleeve on the inside, the sleeve kind of looks like this. The sleeve on the inside is a smaller diameter than what these holes can be. Now, basically, it just really depends on who makes the arms when they come in. I've seen them be dead on, I've seen them be a little off, I've seen, just every different, variation that you can imagine. So anyway, all right, so obviously these are pretty self-explanatory. You got your top side that hooks to the frame, you got your rear end side that hooks to the top of the rear end there. Then you've got your other side, which this side, the bend side, goes closest to your rear end. And then, of course, the other side goes to there. Now, I honestly don't think it makes a bit of difference, really, if you were to run it this way or this way. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all the damn same. But Anyway, I'm told that this is the correct way, but not trying to dumb it down for you too much, but when you go to put these in, this is how you want it. Bolt, washer on the frame. You'll slide this into the frame, slide this through, washer, lock washer. Now, I even go to the extent of using a nut with a nylon end on it because, again, this is going to lock, but I also like the nylon one so it'll lock into place that much more. Anyway, so tighten her down, and she needs to be snug, but does not need to be over tight because obviously this still needs to move. You do need it tight, but like I said, don't sit there with, you know, an impact or just sitting there wrenching it down, because then it's going to squeeze the shit out of this and it's going to mushroom this thing out. You want it nice and tight, but snug, if that makes any sense, to where it's not going to move. So the metal does need to be mashed in there, but don't make it to where the rubber is starting to, you know, squish out, if that makes any sense. So for these specifically, they don't have grease fittings or anything. So as a general rule of thumb for me is when I've got something like this, I will always take packing grease and I'll rub some around the outside of each bushing, and I'll even rub some on the inside. And it's probably overkill, but that's just, you know, the way that I like it, because these things, they have to move. You know, they move up and down a lot, and having a little bit of lubrication will make it work just a little bit better, in my opinion. In addition to that, you know, like I said, these are going to twist. So I always go to the extent of opening these up just a little bit and then putting a little bit of, you know, packing grease right there. Packing grease is my friend. I like packing grease. I also use packing grease on my knockoffs. I'll take about a glob on my finger, and that's about it. And I'll rub on the threads of the knockoff before putting it on. And all that does is keeps it from seizing up. And when I mash on the brake, it's going to lock it in that much more. All right, let's talk about pinion angle, because this is the part that y'all all want to know. Once you've got these installed, if you drive down the street, once you've got them installed and you lift the car and lower the car, you're watching the rear end, okay? And the rear end and the drive shaft. When it goes together, let's just say that it's going together right here. They're locking into place just like this. When your rear end starts to point down like this, the knuckles that are on there will start rubbing. At a certain point, they'll start rubbing. And that's the vibration you normally feel. Perfect pinion angle is dead on, but with lowriders, there is no perfect, okay? It changes the whole time. Now, whether or not you need a slip yoke comes into play, whether or not you can't get the vibration out by adjusting these. So if you have 14s in the rear, normally once you reach 14s and higher is when you start getting into whether or not you need a slip yoke or not. But I have found many a times that even with 16s, if you adjust your pinion angle right, or at least far enough right, you can make it to where you don't even need a slip yoke. And plus, here's, for those of you that don't know, the further up your rear end is towards the front of the car, that easier it is to three-wheel. It's just like a balancing thing, you know. If the pendulum is right here, or whatever you want to call it, the halfway mark, or the part where it's pivoting is right here, and you put weight right here, all you have to do is move a little bit further up, and that weight means more. It'll lift it more easily. Now, your three-wheel will not be as high, however, it is easier to three-wheel. So there's a balancing act on that. But anyway, all right, so going back. So you've got your uppers and your lowers, right? So they're kind of like this, right? So imagine this. Now, if you've got a rear end that is pointing too far down, you have an option. You can either draw these in to point it up, or you can push this out to force the pinion angle, or the rear end, force the rear end up so that your pinion angle is more like this, okay? Now, while you're adjusting these in and out, you need to watch for something. Your rear end and where your cylinders are mounted, they're going to be going up through the bridge or whatever you have in the rear, and you need to watch where those cylinders are under the deck, okay? So everything that you do to these is going to affect how the cylinder is either pointed this way, pointed that way, pointed straight up. You just need to watch those. Once they start to hit the back of the seat or even the rear deck, I mean, if you're hitting the rear deck, then you got a whole different mess of issues, but then it's time to do something else. But anyway, so you need to watch out for what the cylinders are doing in the trunk when you are adjusting these. Now, you can easily find that sweet spot. What you want to do is let's say you've got these in the car and you dump it all the way, and as you're riding, you're like, okay, I'm going to lift it up. All right, I lift it up and I feel a vibration. Well, if that vibration starts when it's lifted all the way up, well, then when you get back and look up underneath, lift the vehicle up all the way, and then look and see which way the pinion angle is. If the pinion angle is like this, now hopefully y'all know what pinion angle is at this point, but it's where the rear end connects to the drive shaft. Hopefully that the pinion angle is as close to this as possible, but let's just say it's way off and it's like this. Well, then you know what to do. You need to adjust it so that this starts to do this. So how do you know when you need a slip yoke is if you run into a situation where no matter if you lift it all the way up and make an adjustment or not, you still have that vibration and you see that your pinion angle's off, well, it probably is time for a slip yoke, and then you can scoot these back just a little bit and make the pinion angle, you know, a little more correct, if that makes sense. When the rear end is closer, your pinion angle gets more out of whack quicker, but when you pull your axle back, there's less time, or not time, but there's more distance, so it's less likely for it to happen, if that makes any sense at all. So you're going to install these and adjust them to your vehicle, and the best possible outcome is that you find that sweet spot from up all the way and down all the way so that you have no vibration. Now, as you are adjusting these, one thing that you need to keep in mind and watch for that sweet spot is the transmission. So the drive shaft goes so far forward. When it's lifting and lowering, you know, watch that drive shaft. That drive shaft goes in and out of the transmission just a little bit. No matter how you slice it, it's going to go in and out. There's a certain point where you have adjusted these too much inward that it's going to slam into the transmission, right? It's too close to the transmission. So you want to extend these out at that point. Now, if you have found the sweet spot going back and forth, other than the fact that it hits into the transmission and you'll feel it, then you need to adjust them out, but you need to adjust them both out, okay? So one turn on this and one turn on this to just slightly pull it back, okay? So you're slightly pulling it back. So you want to watch for it to come in and out of the transmission to a certain point, but only enough to where it's not hitting, if that makes any sense. So hypothetically speaking, you're lifting and lowering and you're not hitting the transmission, but it's pulling out too far. And trust me, you'll know when it's too far because the motherfucking drive shaft will slip out of the fucking transmission and you'll spill transmission fluid everywhere. That's obviously too far. Now you're getting into possibly where you have to have that slip yoke. If you can make it, if you can find that sweet spot to where it goes in and out of the transmission just like this, just a little bit, and to where your pinion angle does not meet and the knuckles start to cause vibration, now you know you've found that absolute sweet spot of where it absolutely needs to be, if that makes any sense at all. So watch that transmission where it goes in and out, and watch your pinion angle where these meet. Okay, so there's a sweet spot right in there in the middle where everything works in unison, no problems. So I'm going to give you a little bit of advice on here, and this is going to be kind of difficult for me to explain other than to just to try and come right out and say it. So when you're doing this, you know, especially with these older cars, pinion angle and all this different stuff, a lot of times the U-joints on these things, especially if they're old as fuck, you need to possibly just go ahead and replace them. And the only reason why I say that is because you don't want to mistake your pinion angle being off by a U-joint that has been in there since the 80s or the 90s, and that's all that's really wrong. And U-joints are not that expensive. They're really not. So, you know, for what it's worth, and the U-joints, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just hold on. I know I got a bunch of them over here. Yeah, see? So these are some U-joints. These are U-joints right here. Let me get in front of the camera. These are the U-joints. You got these in your rear end, or where the drive shaft connects to the rear end. Anyway, so it's got these little pins on the inside. Look, I already got a pin that fell. Anyway, there's pins on the inside and a lot of grease, and it spins around on this. Okay, they're not very difficult to replace or anything like that. You know, they're actually not bad at all. With that said, these being new versus old can have a pretty big effect on how much shake and everything. These things, I don't remember exactly how much they are, but they're not that expensive. I want to say somewhere between 20 to 40 bucks, but I could be wrong on that. Hell, I don't know. Now, when you buy these things, a lot of times they come with their own bushings and everything, pretty much quick and ready to be installed. With that said, sometimes, like on this caddy, for example, the bushing that goes on the rear end, that's going to be right here, that bushing, they sell two different styles. They've got the newer style, which I really like the newer style. They're not rubber. They're basically like a uniball kind of setup, and basically they screw together. And the reason why they're kind of cool is because it allows for like pivot, and which again, if you're wanting a three-wheel and you're low riding, which everybody three-wheels in low riding it seems, you're going to want the pivot. You're going to want to be able to move easy. So that's what those are. They're newer style. We started using them here in the last several years. But your stock ones are going to be your rubber ones. And a lot of times, especially with these old cars, if they've never been replaced, they need to be replaced. So like in this situation, I'm looking at the ones that are on there and they're okay. They might be okay. The rubber ones might be okay, but I'm going to look at them a little more detailed and see if we need to, you know, knock them out and possibly replace them with some of those newer style bushings or some stock ones. I think that the rubber ones probably allow for a little bit of a softer ride because it's rubber, you know, it has some give. Whereas the ones that rotate a little bit, there's not really any give. There's no room for error. So as far as, you know, what rubber is on there, the only rubber that's on there is the top side, which is this side. So it's putting all of the vibration and everything on this side. Another thing that I would suggest to you is go ahead and find out what these bushings are. And in most cases, let me see if I may have it over here. In most cases, these right here, they go bad. They just do. It is a good rule of thumb just to have them on hand so that when they go bad, just replace them all. Do not just replace one or two, just replace them all, because when one starts going bad, it's your weakest link and it'll start moving left and right and doing everything. to where you start feeling, and here's a dead giveaway that your bushings are starting to go bad. When you push on the gas and it does that, and then you let off the gas and you feel this again, those bushings are going bad. Go ahead and just replace them all. They're not very expensive, and it is not hard to replace them. It'll take you about 1 to 2 hours, if that, to replace them all, and then you will pretty much be good for probably the season, you know, give or take, depending on how long you actually, or how much you actually drive your car. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I tried to hit as many of the high notes as possible. Sometimes when I talk and do things, I forget about the common sense things to me or not common sense things to everyone else. So I tried to bring it down as far as I could, not to degrade anyone whatsoever, just to try and explain it as much as possible, but as detailed as possible, so the average Joe that has no clue, which is where I was many years ago, the average Joe can understand this and do everything that I'm doing in my shop in his backyard. And that's the point of all of this. I did not have someone growing up to teach me all this stuff. I had to learn it on my own. I had to fuck up a lot of shit before I got to the point where I knew what I was talking about. So now I'm at that point, and I want to spread the love and spread the knowledge to people that don't know. And all the crap that I've destroyed over time, it's all coming in handy now. So please make sure that you like, subscribe, and comment in the comment section below. A lot of my videos come from your comments and the things that you're stuck on or the questions that you have. You know what? That's where my videos come from. So make sure that you are subscribing and watch for every video. I try to post every day roughly around 5 p.m. give or take, and that's Central Time, my time. I'm in Tennessee. I'm in Clarksville, Tennessee. So make sure that you do subscribe and watch each video. It really does help me out. Keep making these videos, and I will be posting next probably the rest of this Cadillac, installing these, and you know, all lowrider shit.